That's loud.
You can video, yeah.
There we are. Hello.
Yes.
All right.
Sit over there. Okay.
I think Liz is coming. She want to sit over there. I'm comfy. I'm comfy here.
I just didn't want to block you.
No, I don't need to be on TV. You're not blocking it. I was strategic on my part.
Thank you, that's nice.
So we are all set up on Zoom. It's weird why this.
Maybe if you click on the screen, it'll, the bottom part. No, the upper. Doesn't go away.
Weird, weird, weird. Just me.
So is the Cal Cities not helpful?
It was a little bit. I mean, it's a shotgun approach, and some of it, she was laughing at some of my notes because some stuff wasn't important for us whatsoever.
Right. Yeah.
But for the most part, probably 80% of it was, maybe even more. It
Mhm.
was pretty relevant.
Is this list taken from that directly or pulled from it or what?
It's actually a combination. So in January, there was a list that they published of bills of interest. And so I thought actually that's what they were going to cover last Thursday, and they didn't. So it's a combination of the two. And the bills of interest were mostly carryovers from last year.
Yeah.
So you'll see kind of those where they,
Yeah.
you know,
Some that
held at desks or, yeah, the ones with clear positions are the ones that we discussed at the webinar. The other ones will say 2-year bill of interest in the
position meaning the league's position.
correct.
So it's helpful just so we don't lose sight of what was done last year. Wanted to make sure we included any of those. Most of those are, for the most part, done with.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, there's a number of them that are held at desk that probably won't move forward. There was a couple that the league actually did discuss on Thursday that were carryovers from 2021, but only I think 1 or 2.
And just so you know, too, Councilmember Bybee just emailed me this weekend from Cities Association. They're asking for the cities to consider a position on this and
Yeah.
whether or not we have to go to council to do that, or if it's within the purview of this committee to be able to take a position.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I've been calling that one.
that's the AB 1944. That's the one on teleconferencing, the Brown Act. You
Okay.
don't have to post the location
Mhm,
of the meeting any longer.
mhm.
You're remote, as long as you have a quorum here.
Right.
I think for most of these, it's still an implementation issue, but that's kind of.
Yes, it is. Well, it's an implementation issue, but under current law, even since we are in person, if someone wanted to participate remotely, we would still have to notice that.
Oh, I understand the Brown Act part. I mean, just in terms of having
The remote meetings, very much so. I'm surprised that cities are struggling.
So I think that's kind of the relevant part for us. If we want to consider it.
All right, I was just sitting there reading away.
Oh, that's all right. We were just making sure it takes longer to get set up on Zoom and get all set up, so.
Hello.
We gave you a hard copy of the material here just to make it easy for you. if you don't
Okay.
have it.
Oh,
Too
sorry.
much time.
And just so I don't forget, let's touch base after on the question.
We have to touch base on the question I had.
We'll take turns.
All right, let's do this because I do have meetings too, so I want to make sure.
Okay, we want to try to end at 3, Brian.
Yeah,
Okay.
that would be our goal.
Okay, great. So I'll open up the meeting. Let's see if we have public comment there.
We do not, no public comment today.
Okay, great. So we'll go to new business, reviewing the legislative subcommittee calendar. So I was thinking, and feel free to weigh in, anyone. I was thinking we could start with just updates on what we discussed in terms of the subcommittee, any updates that you have or next steps for future meetings. And then we can go to the second one, which is reviewing the bills.
Okay.
But Brian or Angelique, do you want to update us on anything relevant to the subcommittee's operation?
Well, we saw these legislative calendars before. We
Yeah.
put them on here just to more formalize our legislative meetings, some thoughts that the committee had. At the last meeting was that we missed opportunities for key comment periods when things were either coming to a committee vote or coming to a floor vote. So probably want to identify those points of interest. And I think the concept was there may be more frequent meetings around those dates on the calendar than just equally spread throughout the calendar. So that's kind of where we were last time with that. Just wanted.
One thing that I'm curious on, if we have updates or want to plan for this, but we had discussed getting updates from some of our current and potentially future representatives. Have there been any discussions about that, Brian?
Yes and no. One of the legislators just came to mayors and managers, Senator Cortese. He said he would be glad to come meet with us.
Great.
Haven't followed up with other legislators yet.
So we talked last time that we have 4
Yeah,
with, so, and Cortese is on the way out, so we were talking a lot about wanting to make sure we connected with the new legislators.
yeah. And just the logistics of setting up all those meetings. And any other thoughts on, I mean, I just want to make sure we're doing that as soon as possible.
Well, and there was some discussion. We obviously don't want them all in the room at the same time. Probably there was some talk of trying to do them sequential on sort of the same day instead of 4 separate days. If that's still.
I'm not fussed whether it's sequential or separate. I think the more important thing is to get on.
Just
the
getting it
agendas.
scheduled, yeah.
And you may know better of which when we do our pieces of legislation, we should highlight the ones that we're going to focus on, and then
Yeah.
we can ask staff to highlight the schedules for those.
Mhm.
But we could also look at the ones that those 4 representatives are initiating or supporting,
Mhm.
and see where we want to stand on those.
Mhm.
Because Cortese's already come to the Cities Association asking for support, and so has Becker
Yeah.
support on their issues. So we need to be prepared for what their legislation issues are and whether they fit into the focus of
Yeah.
what our principles are. So I think we need our list of bills.
So if we can get there today, maybe then what
Yeah.
we would do as a work product is come back to you with, in addition to those bills, kind of what the layout is, a schedule for them, what committees are going to, what that process looks like, identifying the authors of the bills, and then looking to our
Mhm.
legislatures and what bills they're sponsoring or involved with, and we'll associate them on schedule to come speak to us about those.
Sure, yeah, I would, I would gauge what their availability is and then try to be flexible schedule around that, understanding that may be difficult, but trying to maximize efficiency.
And probably looking to when they're local versus in Sacramento, there'll be times where
Or I mean, but I think, yeah, if it's virtual or if it's an informed staffer.
That's fine.
Actually,
I think
virtual
that's
makes
fine.
it
Yeah.
virtual makes a nice option to make
Yeah.
it more convenient.
And you're okay if it's an informed staff person as opposed to the actual representative?
I am.
That's,
Makes it a lot easier too.
Yeah.
Okay. So we will do that.
And I'm personally, I mean, if we needed to meet next week, if it's 2 weeks from now, but I do want to try to get those scheduled before too many of the committee hearings get underway.
Yeah, I think that's what we were hoping last time
Yeah,
we spoke.
So-
which is coming up on the 18th.
So between now and the 18th is the goal.
Yeah.
Yep. By April 18th, if possible.
So anything else on subcommittee business?
Well, I had a couple of questions. I'm not sure where we ended up.
Yeah.
I think, we know what our 5 positions are based on our policy. There are some other things that might be of interest, certainly of interest to me, is the energy. So we don't have a policy about those. So I'm not quite sure how we're going to handle it. They're outside the scope.
Yeah.
And then the second one is that you brought up last time was who's going to sign the letters. And the intention was that it would be the commission. We wouldn't wait for the mayor to sign. And you also had some questions about having the council review things. But of course, the reason we didn't do it last time was the timing issue. So do you have any thoughts or concerns on how you want to handle any of that, particularly who signs it and the timing? Because it's always crunched.
Yeah, well, with regards to the first question, you know, I'm open to suggestions. I would certainly be interested in considering those, particularly because a couple of our representatives are carrying those bills. And I think we'll hear about them when they come speak. So maybe we could adopt a policy that if something, and I don't know, Brian, you may want to weigh in terms of whether this is consistent with what we've adopted, but maybe if the committee agrees to it as a group, we can consider those or recommend those. Some kind of.
We can sign the letter. So for example, we've got Berman's DTA bill, whatever that's going to say.
This is.
I don't know.
current Policy, I don't know if it's helpful. Have it. Yeah, just-
I haven't.
Okay. Right, I wouldn't want to-
So like
Sometimes easy
on the bill about BTA, it would directly affect the city's finances, legal authority, and public safety and operations. So ostensibly, we could review it under that
Mhm.
basis. The energy ones, we could possibly take under protects and reduces local control. There's a couple of bills that want to stop cities from implementing energy switching, mandating, changing from gas to electric. So we might be able with this wording to make it work. So I'm willing to try making it work under what we
I'm fine with
have.
that.
Okay, and then we'll just see. And I'm also fine having the chair of the committee sign the letter. And then go from there.
Yeah, I'm fine with both of those. Why don't we adopt that as a you
Yeah.
to see
If
if
we have hiccups and something, we can try and make it work.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'd like to, I'm in favor of kind of getting something done on paper, so to speak, and then you know, maybe at the end of the session, formalizing something as a best practice.
Okay. So in terms of this, I'm anxious about getting the list of bills to figure out what we've got to respond to by the 18th. So that's where.
Yeah, well, I think we have a good starting point with the bills to watch.
So that bill we were just talking about died in committee February 1st.
Which one?
The ATA bill.
AB 1091, is that the one you're
The
talking about?
Berman bill.
No, it's
Is there a new number for
he
it?
has a new one, yes.
It was changed to a 2-year bill, and it's the language is placeholder language.
Yep.
Which could be
Oh,
entirely.
that was the one they did.
changed or
That's a
updated.
Placeholder language in there. There was one. Okay, we'll
I
find.
know it's still very active.
He's having discussions. He just had I know he was
There was a placeholder bill. We'll find that.
yeah, and he just had a town hall, so he's seeking input.
Oh, the one he had on Friday
Mhm.
with Chappie and Teresa.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a very active one.
Do you have?
That one is, I think that one is a good example. That one is a good example where, and I'm not saying we need to, but if we had an approach and we wanted to weigh in at this stage, we could really get a chance to shape the bill. Because he's actively seeking that kind of input, it's still being written. That's not always the case, but
So Cities Association Legislative Subcommittee is working on it with him too.
Okay.
Yes, and this is the time. I think what we want to offer now, based on his presentation at Cities, is do we think it needs a total restructure do we think it needs to be not all elected boards? One of my comments is I think they need to separate out BTA, public transit from congestion management. I think they, over the years, have become conflicting goals, and they spend more time on congestion management than they do on public transit. So he would like input like that. I would be supportive of giving him feedback on separation of congestion management from BTA.
Me too.
I'm not sure. The problem I have with the existing board, which I think makes it non-functional. So Silicon Valley Clean Energy has 13 board members. We have an excellent staff that properly prepares us. BPA, it seems, from my limited observation, but from conversation with board members, they don't get legitimate briefings from staff. We at Silicon Valley Clean Energy have the same turnover issue, and we manage quite well. So there seems to be a real challenge with the BTA staff. And then my secondary issue, of course, is that San Jose has too much influence. It has six votes, is that right? Yeah, so.
At least.
Okay, yeah, at least, exactly. So I would be supportive of changes that clarify the congestion management from public transit. I'd be supportive of working to do some kind of combined transportation, excuse me, transportation agency around the Bay. I'm hesitant to make major changes in who's on the board until the big picture of the Bay Area gets sorted. Because we have, what do we have? 18, 19 different
Yeah,
agencies.
I'm very concerned about any transition that it be managed.
And what's going to happen after this? This appears to be too short term. I won't say
Yeah.
knee-jerk, but too short term.
And if it's done too abruptly, then we lose a lot of influence and
Right,
ability to.
right. And I do think San Jose has too much influence.
So I'm supportive of those things. I'll just say, like I said, whatever. I'm not at the point where I can say, oh, this exact composition
Yeah,
is
yeah.
the best one, but I want to weigh in and say, well, here's some potential issues with different ones.
Right.
One would be the transition period. One would be, maybe some kind of mixture of stakeholders, but I think banning any one group or type of person could cause issues or unintended consequences. And
In terms of who serves on the board,
Yes.
being elected official
Yeah.
representatives.
Especially in the short term. And I also think that there needs to be funding from the state for any kind of if there's a change made, so we don't lose out on resources.
So would you like it to be more individualistic when we talk with Berman,
What do you mean by that?
as opposed to having position from this committee
2181.
on that? Would you like just for each of us to write our own letters? Or do you want to try and, how would you like to communicate the information?
I think in this case, it would have more weight if it was done as a group, and I think we could come to a
Okay,
consensus.
I'm fine on that.
So, have you, Brian, do you have notes on that, on some of that input and concerns?
I have a few notes, and
Yeah.
before we close, if we're gonna write, I just want to make sure we're on the same page, so.
Sounds like we may have.
Some comments about the transition period. And I wasn't clear on what the message was with that, but we want to clarify that. That there's a mixture of stakeholders on the board. And that there's significant funding from the state to ensure we don't miss out on available resources.
When you had some,
And I had some comments.
Yeah.
And keep going. I'm sorry.
Okay, so my comment was that VTA has conflicting responsibilities between a public transit agency and congestion management.
which I agree with. I mean, I think we're pretty much in agreement.
Between congestion management.
And if, and this is hard to express. How do you get that representation? So is it by population? What it is now, which is why San Jose had some votes. How do you support a board doing high level decision making as opposed to, and I'll use this for lack of a better word, political decisions, me, myself, and I kind of thing. So maybe we could include a comment that says, because there's something in Berman you on Friday, someone said that people use the DTA board as a political stepping stone. Well, I think they use it as a political microphone, but I'm not sure they use it as a stepping stone. I was trying to think of anyone who was on the BTA board over the past years that I know that actually did go up to other higher public office, and I can't think of anyone. But they do use it for internal political. So if there was some way, I'm just putting the thought out there, how can the board maintain high level decision making versus political decision making? How could the board be more effective if people acknowledged that it was all of us together? It's not unlike what we're trying to do on the council. Even though we're 5 districts, we manage it as a city, and we don't care whether there's 5,500 voters here and 4,200 voters there. We're doing it as a whole. We're not trying to manage by district or city. So maybe there's some way to put a comment like that in to find a way to equity in decision making, not on politics.
Some of it is a cultural change that's needed.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely
Well
culture
said,
because
well
that's,
said.
yeah, it's certainly not how it operates. Now everyone wants to make sure they're getting their share of whatever it is, right? What's coming to West Valley cities.
And part of that, I think, is because
Part
San
of it is
Jose
San
has
Jose.
so much power that it forces that dynamic.
Yeah, I think you're right. And that's goes to the stakeholder, which is sort of your comment. So we'll try to find some way. I think if I read that correctly, to blend that when you talk about a mixture of stakeholders on the board, it's to really achieve what you're trying to achieve. It's
Well, and
not
that,
as an overbalance of stakeholders that are pushing it to be political.
yeah, and I personally, this doesn't need to go in there, but I think that some of the ideas that we discussed, like having citizen residents appointed, making it more non-political, I think those might be fine and beneficial towards that, but there could be unintended consequences if you want a lot of people. That's where the mixture is coming.
Exactly. So how we ever, and I do think I have spent so much DTA meetings in the last 8 years. One of my very first meetings was at the Measure Highway 5 light rail discussion, and staff came in. The CEO came in and basically said, "This is it. This is your answer." And we're sitting there going, "Huh?" And they were just. It was their way. They were not interested in any input. So the quality of information that staff, the ETA staff provides to the board needs to be improved. I don't know how to phrase it either, but it was so self-serving. So.
Yeah, I will say that, and so where I'm coming from, Brian, and what I think we're in agreement on is that we want to offer input. It's not saying the bill needs to be drafted the way that we have in our minds, and it's this one particular way. I think it's we're offering input, and one of the reasons behind that for me is that I think that there is a transition going that we're kind of in the middle of. The new director, I think is a drastic difference from what's been before, and I'm hopeful it's going the right direction. So I don't want, but at the same time, it'll be a while before we can see some of those changes. And so I think, we don't want to discourage that, but we do want to offer input if it's being considered.
And I think that's very well pointed out, because in one sense, you'd be pulling the rug out from
Right.
underneath the new person.
Yeah.
And it would be terribly chaotic.
Yeah, we really just came in a few months ago at a
Yeah.
very,
Yeah, at a
Yeah,
very
yeah,
traumatic time.
yeah.
So things may not be good now, but the unintended consequences of immediate change, which would be January 1st,
Mhm.
immediate change is not constructive.
Brian, and did you have in there about a transition period?
I did, and I
Okay.
didn't know if there was any more specifics to that. It just generically wrote transition period.
Well,
It just kind of connects to that point, and some of the changes in turmoil now.
A transition for the sake of change and may in fact be counterproductive.
Right.
You have new administration,
Yeah.
which could put the organization and their administrative plan in peril.
Mhm.
And then you just, you have to be aware that the complexity of the organization is such that immediate change, i.e. the end of the year, would likely be very conflicted.
Yeah, I think even if the changes on paper were sound, that would be catastrophic.
I mean, we have to recognize bureaucracy.
So you're talking about longer transition period probably.
Yeah.
Than trying to do something.
So-
It sounds like.
Probably longer than they're currently envisioning.
And maybe ultimately, we can end up with a series of principles, like says, transition plan must consider timing, staffing, unions, timing. If you're going to make a change, timing has to be a major consideration, a major priority. And then another major consideration is any regional planning. Another major consideration would be your state financing. To me, another major consideration would be separation of congestion management and public transit.
Maybe another point that we can make perhaps in the introduction of this is, and I say this because Berman is also often authors a lot of these housing bills that we've weighed in on in the past. One of the reasons why this issue, one of the many why this is particularly important to Campbell, is that we're often left out of the conversation when these housing bills get drafted, assuming that the city has control over its public transit. Those bills aren't written with cities like Campbell in mind, where we're
They're
in some
written
ways
with
at the
San
mercy.
Francisco,
Yeah.
Oakland, San Jose. Yeah.
Los Angeles.
Los Angeles, thank you. Los Angeles, Sacramento. I mean, Campbell is in fact penalized because it's one of those it's really the best example of unintended consequences.
Yeah, I would make that point at least in the introduction, which I think will give the suggestions more weight. So I think, we spent a while on it, but I think, like I said, that's a good one where I think now is the right time to weigh in, where we can really help shape the bill. So my suggestion would, and please, weigh in, but my suggestion would be that we try to have a draft in the next couple weeks or so before the committee meets, and try to, if we have edits and feedback, try to resolve that by online and then transmit that to the author.
Yeah, we would do that. Typically, the mayor would sign it, but what we'll do is we'll draft something, we'll circulate it, get comments, revise it. And then
They'll circulate it to us.
exactly. No, I'm just to you.
So I'm fine. We haven't really clarified this, but I'm fine if we have agreement. And it makes a lot of sense. Last year I was there and it just happened that way, but chair of the PMO is, and we can say it representing the city because it complies with our policies. So I'm fine if the chair of the subcommittee signs it.
Yeah, I think that makes sense when the mayor's not serving on the committee. And maybe we would presume that if the mayor were on the committee, the mayor would be chair.
Yeah.
I think
That's,
that's kind of,
that's,
Okay, let me sort through that a little bit. Our policy calls for the mayor to sign it. And that was one of the things that we were struggling with.
I thought we took that out.
We talked about it, but we never changed that, how to handle that. I don't want to put a wrinkle in
oh,
anything.
yeah, for the mayor's signature.
And the question came up of what happens when the mayor disagrees with the position.
did
that he made,
happen.
Which did happen.
Which is why we were gonna take it out.
And we never went any further. And we said, well, we prefer to have the mayor, so maybe we should just lean on the mayor to sign it.
Okay, well,
In which case, I think if the mayor refused to sign it pursuant to city policy, then we're left with really no choice.
and
But I just want to make sure we're on the same page. I think that's
Yeah.
where we landed with that. Then we would come back to the committee chair would sign that.
so in this case, why don't we, I think we have to stick with with the policy. I think we may want to add a provision or modify it or say, if there's an issue, it goes to
Well, this
subcommittee.
really came up before where the mayor refused to sign
Yeah.
something. We said, well, now we'll.
We got confused to sign it.
And so for lack of that clarity in
Yeah.
there, we'll follow that process. If the mayor has any issue with it, then we'll come back, circulate.
Yeah, and I think future, the staff will prepare position letters for the mayor's signature or subcommittee signature.
Yeah.
Based on consistency with the policy scope.
I would support.
We can look at that. There may, as we vet through this, there may be some other clarification language in the policy, so we'll kind of take some notes of that, and bring those all back at once. But we'll go ahead and look at this. Input.
Why,
Okay.
so I don't think it should be an issue in this case, but I just want.
I don't think so either.
No, I don't either. But
It will be, if we don't deal with it again, it will come up at some point, so.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that was
if you have trouble-
AB 2181, by the way. That's that bill
But,
number.
thank you, yeah, so that's valuable, and let's definitely track the relevant hearing date. I mean, we're fine for now, but track any future hearing dates.
I'd like to get this letter to him in the next week.
I think if yeah, that would be my preference.
We'll put something together as soon as we can.
So when's your next mayor's one-on-one meeting or something? Can you organize it so you can discuss it then?
Yeah, it will be before the next meeting. It'd be Monday, the 4th, next Monday. If we can get it by Monday, we can. Let's see if we can get together. See, if we have to get together, we'll have to vet it with you.
Yeah, you bet it with us. and-
Yeah, we'll be quick on getting feedback to you. Brian, why don't you take us through the Alex Lee bill that you mentioned, since you just heard about that one?
So the first one I did-
So maybe you could one for us to discuss as well. And then maybe we can go through the list.
Yeah, Ann raised this issue. It was brought up at Cities Association. I'm going to go with the cities. Her question to me was, should we discuss it with the legislative committee as a council have to take a position on this? So I'm looking at page 9 in your
Yep.
packet.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so this basically changes a little bit the way we do things now under the Brown Act. If you participate remotely, you have to list your address. This modifies it. Not present, you don't actually have to physically list your private residence or your hotel room or wherever you're staying. Still requires you to have a majority here. Probably
I'm not
protects.
sure it does.
Well, it doesn't eliminate the requirement that a quorum is here. They made sure it was clear when we listened to the league presentation, you still have to have a quorum present.
Okay, because that's not consistent with the presentation I heard last week.
What did you
So it
hear?
doesn't change the quorum requirements, just simply changes.
So, okay, so if we want to say, which makes more sense to me, that there has to be a quorum, and all it had, the definition at AMAG was it had to be a quorum within the jurisdiction. So you couldn't have a 5-member board, you couldn't have 3 members traveling in Hawaii, Massachusetts, and New York. But you could have a quorum of everybody working.
I don't think this change, we'll confirm that, but I don't know. We'll confirm that.
So
It is, you've always had to have a quorum within the jurisdiction.
That's
And this doesn't change that.
Right.
And I don't believe it changes that you still need a quorum at the location.
Okay, I'm 99.9% sure that goes away.
Well, this isn't the same one. This is a different bill.
Yeah, there's 3 bills about this.
The quorum of the
So,
legislative participating
yeah,
portion
ABAG
of
went
city
through a big
relocations
fuss up.
clear.
Yeah, there was a separate bill that kind of competes with the AB 2449 that does mess with the quorum requirements
Who's
On
that one
page
carried
10.
by?
on page 10.
Would be a-
The very next page.
So one of the other.
On the
big
backside.
things- So for Silicon Valley Clean Energy, how we're handling this is, and you will be getting a phone call, Brian, that if people do use their home, it has to be ADA accessible. Okay, now my house isn't. So they're making provisions for the Silicon Valley Clean Energy because we meet at night to pay city staff to open city halls so that people could come into their local city hall as well. But it's clearly based on, you do not need a quorum in Cupertino, you can just need a quorum in the county.
We'll clarify that. I don't think this bill does that. We'll clarify.
Let's clarify that. I am generally supportive of the concept. I think I think for a lot of places, the second part, the requirement for teleconferencing might be a challenge, but it's, I think it's a movement for us.
Well, that's true. We're already doing it from
Yeah.
cities. This is, and that's what the league spoke to, is that challenge some cities have to
Right.
actually do the telecom.
I think others
We're
will
doing
have
hybrid
to.
Zoom, okay.
Yes,
You only get that, you only take advantage of this if you offer that to the public.
yes,
You don't
So,
have to notice your home
Yes.
address if the public.
Yeah.
participates.
yes.
so for that reason, I would be supportive because I think it gives us more flexibility to do what we're already doing.
Yeah, I think there's still some hiccups in it. And then-
Yeah, I'd like to clear that up.
Yeah, support in concept is clear.
19.
But the other thing I
44.
found out also from Silicon Valley Energy is this is now a 2-year bill. It is not an urgency bill.
Okay.
It was an intent to have it be an urgency bill, and to my current knowledge, it is not. So it won't go into effect until January if it passes. And between April and January, there may be a whole bunch of other changes.
Just a quick note, something that I thought of, I think we had last time, Brian. We should start adding a 5th column to the spreadsheet listing our city or the subcommittee's position. I think that would be helpful as we go through to start tracking
We
this.
did, yeah.
So to capture what we just said, so just because I know that supporting concept, that's the league's position, but it probably summarizes ours as well. We just
But
want to
it's
capture
nice
that.
and clear.
So on that last one, I'll let Ann know. I think this committee feels it's not reading between the lines, but reading between the lines, that it's within the scope of this committee to take a position on
I
that
think so.
bill. And that we're supporting in concept at this point for her communication down to the cities association.
Which will be telling me. 'cause I'm the legislator.
Yeah. And you'll say,
Excuse me.
I did.
Mhm.
Okay, so we'll support in concept on that at this point.
Great.
Is it, you thinking we need a support letter or just indicate support in concept?
I think we probably need to clarify some of the questions first
Okay.
before doing that, but
Okay.
I think we could do a support letter.
So right now we'll just list it support concept.
Do we want to briefly discuss SB 1100, the Cortez bill? I think for a couple reasons, that's the same page 9.
Yes.
Sorry to jump around a bit. But I think, I know we'll hear about that one.
It was important to him.
It's a
It's
local
less
issue,
got
yeah.
That's why I was surprised to hear about Lee's bill, because I thought Cortese was covering it. Oh, this is the one removing any.
Yeah, this is one for unruly behavior
This one, a lot of people have a lot of trouble with.
because of the definitions.
No, because of the public hearing. You what's the definition of unruly? In a public meeting. You can shut them down after a minute or 2 minutes, and you can remove them if they're unruly to that, but you can't stop their free speech. So that's why everybody I know is having trouble with this.
I do have a definition in the draft of the bill for willfully interrupting.
I think they're trying, and the presentations I've heard, I think they're seeking input and trying to address,
How to handle it.
yeah, those concerns. So in terms of what I would see as the city's position, I would say watch, certainly perhaps support in concept, but I think hearing and asking those questions directly once we get that meeting scheduled, that's why that will be valuable. One-
Doesn't MMO have one in the assembly somewhere?
Oh, he's a co-author of the bill. Yeah, it's the same one. One of the questions I would have is, what kind of liability does this potentially open up for cities?
Liabilities, what liability?
And certainly, if this bill gets passed and does that open and incinerizes, does that
Yeah,
open us up to a First
1983.
Amendment challenge?
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
It'd be a 1983 claim that you retaliated
Yeah.
against the public for using. their
Or
First Amendment rights.
does the bill remove?
Because
some
you
of
have
that
had them
liability?
removed, there have been some action.
That's exactly what I'm saying. Yeah,
Yeah.
the whole free speech.
Yeah, so that would be,
That's why I don't think it's gonna get passed, because it has a lot of objections from, the various groups. I'm happy to say, watch on that as our position at this time.
yeah, definitely. So Liz, I have some suggestions for potential other
Go ahead.
ones we could get. I just want to make sure I'm not monopolizing if there are ones.
There's a few, but not a big
Okay.
one.
Well, I just try to think of both the ones that, we may have interest, and ones we may hear from the authors on. I definitely want to watch the Becker bill, on page 167. And that goes to your point about some of the
Yeah.
issues which may come.
Exactly. This another one that may be on here is SB 884 McGuire.
Yeah, that's
Um,
page 3.
uh,
I'm concerned about our capacity.
oh, yeah, where did you see it on the list?
It's top of page 3.
You're suggesting watch both of those bills? Any position, maybe there's no position, it's just.
I think watch. I just that's what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, we definitely,
67
Mhm.
and SB.
yeah, this is a risky one. And yeah, the next one is SB 1393.
Yeah.
Next one on the list, that one is one we do not want to support. This is reads very heavily for industry lobbyists. The IOCs, the independent operating people to control. the
Because it makes it
marketplace.
more difficult to electrify.
Yeah, so this one is a strong, I can't imagine going forward on that one.
I would oppose that.
Yeah.
And we would oppose it because of,
It says.
Taking away local control.
thank you. No, just, yeah, thank you. I just wanted to get to
We
the,
already have an ordinance that talks about making electrification. The state energy code is changing to make things all electric.
Mhm.
But this is the next area that Silicon Valley Clean Energy has been speaking to staff about. And it has to do with what's the definition of new and when you convert people in the kitchen or whatever, you're
Mhm.
required to go electric.
Yep.
That's the kind of called the REACH 2.0.
Mhm.
And what's of interest here is, I caution them, is the city of Campbell has a definition of new. And it has a definition of new as being, you have to be 75% of 4 different categories. And then if you're not, then you become new. But if somebody is just doing a major interior remodel of a kitchen, primary thing, or if they're changing, getting a new hot water heater, can you mandate that they be converted to heat pumps and all electric? And the intent is, yes, you absolutely want to be able to do that, but it's a very tough, tricky discussion. And that's what this Silicon Valley Clean Energy Board is coming to each city and discussing as a REACH Code 2.0. So this is a real baddie. It contradicts, what we need is, I don't know, is it 75% of all residential pollution is from kitchen appliances, like that. So you don't want to reinforce putting in gas, any more gas.
I would say since there's seems to be clear agreement, maybe we can plan on writing an opposed letter.
And that's why I was asking about what position, so we will identify that.
Yeah.
Identify why we're opposing.
It's contrary to the long-term best interests.
Yeah.
Residents' health and state climate control goals.
Just like a couple others I wanted to highlight on page 16. The first 2 bills we previously supported, they've been turned to 2-year bills, but I would be okay with continuing to support in one place.
410.
These were both essentially, they would create grant or funding opportunities for transitioning.
I mean, we can already do this. I think that was what we said before. We can already rezone.
No, right, I think at least my support, I think some of the discussion was because it would award grants
Yeah.
for these
So
opportunities.
I would support it as long as the grant funding was maintained. If they took that grant funding out of it, I would be neutral at best.
But I would just say continue to watch, maybe because we already had registered. a
That's fine.
petition on it.
I would agree.
Continue to watch.
And when you get the schedule. So I think we talked about adding a column last time of the dates. We do something about column what committee dates, something.
Yes.
For the
I
ones
think
that
it
we're gonna watch.
It was
we'll
eventually,
identify.
yeah.
We'll identify. Not on every single bill, but the ones
Yeah.
that we're tracking. Which other one, SB 15, was there another one on that page? I missed?
It was the first 2, yeah.
Oh, 15,
We
513.
previously supported both, yeah. 15, 513. And then there's a couple of interesting ones on page 22 involving public safety. Or this whole section. So just to briefly, these are new ones. So just briefly, my reading, I would support the first one because of the grant opportunity. And the second 2 on page 22, I would be interested in getting PD's input and just having them weigh in on, is this an issue? Would this be helpful just to inform our,
So I actually would like PD support on all of them.
yeah.
Yeah. And I will tell you, I was in San Francisco 2 weeks ago from 11 p.m. till 5 a.m. And I'm out in the boat and they stole my catalytic converter on a 17-year-old car. I had to go through the whole thing of tows and whatever.
Oh, I'm
It
sorry.
was a big, the funny part was I honestly thought a bomb got on under my car when I
Wow.
first turned the ignition on. It was just so incredibly startling.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I know we're doing with that, we have programs locally for that, so I'd be, just interesting. I don't know if I get their, I don't know if I would say we need their support necessarily. I want their opinion to help us make an informed, yeah,
just information so that we can evaluate, yeah.
yeah.
Just for clarification, supporting on the grant AB 2062 and then check in with PD on the remaining.
I think we're gonna check on PD and all of it.
all of
Yeah.
them.
All three.
I was just saying that I personally at this point would support the first one.
I'm inclined to support it, but I would like to know a
Yeah.
little more about. what
There's
the-
two
There's
more.
more.
There's two more on the other side.
I know,
Bill
I
Evans.
know, and I think those are a little more complicated. But we may want to, I don't want to overwhelm them. I prioritize those as being, I think, the ones that would be most relevant to us. But I'm open, if members of the committee
So
feel.
I sent you a list of all the ones that I thought we were.
Yeah, we have your list, Liz, in here.
It's on this one.
Yeah, it's at the end of the document.
I felt that,
We didn't put it in there.
No, because we wanted to hear from
So-
the committee to see it.
You want me to run through those?
I didn't feel that the second thing, I think that's getting a little broader, yeah.
So I have yours here, Liz, if you want me to run through them, just
Yeah.
for organization
So what
purposes. And you can-
I think I sent them to you too. This is the list of all the bills that I am aware of. There was one for the Silicon Valley Leadership Group that I thought was pretty interesting. And then there was another one from the Community Foundation.
Yeah, there was a AB 1911, which was income tax credits. And that was for mobile home.
I'm looking for the one from Silicon Valley Leadership. Group. Yeah. And then there was a second Becker bill, which was
On
See,
clean energy,
no. How's it?
There's a 22, AB 2244 for the church land affordable housing bill.
No.
And then there's the AB 2357 surplus land act update. Any other ones?
See if I can-
So there's one on disposal of city property. There's one on disposal of school property. There's one that allows affordable housing on church sites.
Let's go through this. Cal City sponsored SB 1466. I'm looking for the one that's from, oh yeah, AB 2063. Berman eliminates impact fees on density bonus units. That's one we want to pay attention to.
That's on
yeah, let's add that
here.
to the.
That's in our-
AB 2234, Silicon Valley Leadership Checklist of Ideal Application. It reduces the review time to 30 days for projects under 25 minutes. So AB 2234.
I'm sorry, I'm not seeing that on.
So why this may not be the exact same as what Cities Association is.
I
I thought we had captured it separately, so I apologize if we didn't.
Yeah, I just want to make sure we have those.
AB
Let's talk- What was that number? AB 2264.
AB 2234. And AB 2063, which is Berman, which eliminates impact fees on density bonus.
Does Brian have that? email?
Yeah, I've sent all this.
Okay. So I think that's fine for now, but let's just make sure we have them for the next meeting.
So I've sent you a series of emails with bills listed. I have this is an updated summary, which is basically the same.
2234 is on, oh. The housing neighbors bill, at the wrong page. Wait a minute.
Yeah, it's similar to what I sent. Let's check that one.
It's page 18 for 2234 on the bottom.
Would no later than January 2024 require public agencies to allow posted time limit permits to be applied for, completed and stored to a publicly available process on its website. Until the established public agencies shall not accept applications. Other ones. That one is not the one. It may be, but it may have changed already. Because I do have Beavis and Grace on support as sponsoring this. It's requiring a checklist. It's requiring a checklist of an ideal application. And all permits have to be online. And they need to be completed in 30 days for units 24 and below. Let me see what the text.
We're coming up on the end of time. Maybe we can verify and add anything.
We'll make sure that discussion. We do have 2234 in here, and it's just simply the online permitting system. But we'll check that, sure.
It's
And any other
Okay.
bill
So,
that you mentioned.
yeah, so this one I sent to you on February 23rd. Cities to publish a checklist for all applications to be deemed complete, permits to be processed online. Once applications deemed complete, permits shall be blah, 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 blah.
We're already,
To learn more, go about AB 2234 and Silicon Valley Leadership's housing policy priorities.
I think existing law requires us to publish our checklist for completion. That was a requirement of the previous state law. I think this comes on it, so we'll confirm that. Where we have to publish it.
Yeah.
So people's not guessing what they complete to start the shot clock.
This is unusual for Silicon Valley Leadership Group to publish their own legislative thing.
Seems this is getting at just, and we already do the online permitting, thank goodness. I think.
But you have to do the entire thing online.
Record that. I think we have the ability, you have to be able to submit your plans online. And that's what
This goes beyond that, as I understand it. So anyway, so I sent it to you on February 23rd.
That may be a longer discussion and
Yeah.
we'll come back.
All right, so just
we'll double
check
that.
check on those bills that I sent you. Please.
My last brief comment that I wanted to note is that page 24, SB 555 was another one that we previously supported that has been turned into a 2-year bill. So I would like, this is the transit occupancy tax, which in light of previous discussions and the fact that it's supported, I'd like to continue tracking certainly for the time being and perhaps continue to support.
track and continue to support.
Perhaps I think that bears further discussion, but we supported last
We've
year.
been bringing it up several times with the council and budget study session.
Yeah, it's only become more relevant since then. So
Okay, so our next, we'll update these charts. We'll look at a few of these bills that we discussed more detail on. We'll add the columns, but more importantly, our next meeting, we'll try to line up the 4 state legislators, have them or someone with some responsibility from the office come speak to us. By, I think we had
Before
April 18th.
And what I was going to suggest is when we organize this material next time, first pages of all the ones that are on our list, and what we want to talk about, and then maybe if we get through those, we can go through the rest afterwards.
Sure.
You don't have to keep flipping.
And Brian, can I make a suggestion? Could you email out what you just said in bullet point? And then we can refer back to it at the beginning of the next meeting. Thank you.
Yep.
Great, I think we're done.
Thank you.
Thank
Meeting.
you.
Thank you. Have a good discussion.
There's always a lot of good stuff to discuss.
Yeah. Brian, you have to go, right? For,
Let me just, double-
we can chat later. I don't mind. It's not urgent.
okay, if you give me just 2 minutes. I'll give you a few minutes, just let me-
Okay, I only have a couple minutes anyway, but.
Yeah, let me just tell, just give me even 30 seconds.
Okay. So, you got the chapter. Well, I'm really glad to have you help us staff these, Angela.